want you to think about some things as we close up shop now in the area of, pardon the pun, some homework that I want to give you to think about a bit how this might play out in your everyday life. We've obviously gleaned a few things along the way. Let's make sure that we understand a couple things first. The privilege of thanking God for the duty and privilege of work. That thought might be repulsive to some. I'm going to establish a spectrum up here that this is the beginning of the spectrum, the ability to thank God for the duty and privilege of work, and then we'll try to work our way down here in a moment. But frankly, maybe you're outside the roller coaster. You're not on the spectrum yet. You're saying, dude, I hear what you're saying, but I'm not there. You don't know what it's like in my office. You don't know what you're asking me to do. Then I'll ask you to think about it. I'll ask you to think about, has God ordained work for you? And is the work that you have been given to you by God? And in some realm, can you share that with Him? Beginning that process, I think, can move us along the spectrum. For those that might already be on here, just thank God. Thank God you got a job. Thank God that you have the duty and the privilege to work with Him and others. But then I want you to ask you to reimagine your work a bit. Kind of cast some of the normal ways of thinking about work and let's come at it a different perspective, okay? The thing that reimagine work can really help us do is to not see work just as a place to make money and not just as a place, maybe one day, if everything goes perfectly, I might be able to lead someone to Christ at work, okay? Too often we've reduced work to that. In many cases, in sessions that I have with men especially, they've completely divorced it. My work and my faith are totally separate. I don't take God to work, and I don't take my work home. But that is what I do during the day. It is how God provides a living for me and my family, and that's how I view making money, and that's what God has for me. And I'm saying that work imagined that way, just as a place to make money, just as a place maybe one day to lead someone to Christ, is insufficient. We're capable of doing many things at the same time, by the way. So I'm not saying we don't do these, but let's add to the bucket. Okay, let's put some more pearls in the basket and how we might live or be wise in our work and reimagine that work, not just this way, but in other ways, okay? Seeing work not just as a way to make money, not just as a way to influence others for Christ, but also as an opportunity to participate with God in His plan for humankind, an opportunity to bring Him pleasure, as we've seen, an opportunity to enjoy a meaningful and real partnership with God, that take God to work kind of attitude that is new to a lot of people. This idea of caring and watching over the planet in and through Him as a partner with Him. Let's go a little bit more deep, okay? Reimagine work can be an opportunity to demonstrate the God-given creativity that God has placed within you for your work. Now, about a third of you just checked out on me because you're going, creativity? I mean, these guys are creative. I'm an engineer. I'm not creative. I'm a lawyer. I'm a doctor. I'm a professor. I'm just trying to raise kids. What are you talking about being creative? All human beings are made in the image of God, believer and unbeliever. And part of being made in the image of God is to have this deposit within us, not only to have spiritual capacity, we can be united with God spiritually, but also to carry on what I call the family business. If you look in the Bible, the very first verb assigned to God in the Scripture, Bereshit bara Elohim, bara, to create. And I set forth that what He possesses, He has imparted to us. And we have the ability to be imaginative, to be innovative. So sure, you're a civil engineer, mechanical engineer, I get that you have a structure, and physics and math and gravity kind of rule that structure, but there's also room for imagination. There's also room for innovation. Doctors and lawyers, you have structures of laws and biology and science, but there's still room for innovation and imagination. That's how discoveries are made. by working within the structure, but also bringing innovation and imaginative. That's the creative deposit that God has put in all human beings. We can exercise that for good in our life. If you'll allow, I'm a literary engineer. I take a look at the structure of language in the text, and I notice mood and verb and nouns and verb tenses and objects and mood and genre and all these different things, but then I can still use imagination, and I can still use innovation. So, it's not just the Bob Dylans and the Beyoncés of the world that are creative. It's not just the worship guys and gals that are creative. In fact, they also work with structure like the engineers, tonality and music and notes, what is pleasing to the ear, but then they can infuse creativity, innovation, imagination into that effort. We're creative beings. We have the opportunity also to show value to our fellow workers, that in fact our fellow workers are valuable. All human beings made in the image of God, right? Yeah, even that coworker that you're so glad got transferred out of your department, got moved to the 6th floor, and you're trying to work your whole day around not seeing him or her in the parking lot or the elevator, that individual is made in the image of God and thus is valuable. One of the conferences I enjoy most is the Faith and Work Conference put on by Tim Keller's church in New York. And it's every November, and I've gone a couple of times now and really enjoy some of the speakers there. And one of them, a workshop leader, her name is Nancy Ortberg, and she's the director of leadership development at a church in Chicago. And she tells the story where she first learned the idea that her coworkers are valuable. She's at her late 50s now. When she was probably earlier in her 20s, she was a nurse. And she was a surgical nurse, and she was assigned to a team of doctors and attendings, and typically the same anesthesiologist in this hospital. And the routine would be there to be an emergency situation. They'd get triaged in the ER and then moved to surgery as necessary. And this was the team waiting for now the triaged individual to come in for surgeries. In particular, one day there was a 24-year-old woman that had gone through multiple traumas and had to endure multiple surgeries. And over a 3-hour code, she recalls it was quite iffy whether this young lady was going to make it. The particular doctor that she most enjoyed working with, the team leader, was a Christ follower, a Christian. And she learned all sorts of not only medical techniques from him, but ways of understanding people. One particular day on that code, afterwards they would have a typical Q&A that the good teacher would have and talk about medical stuff, the kind of stitch we used here, and maybe we should move that gauze tray over here, and we're going to need a better lighting for that type of technique, things that the nurses would talk about. There was a particular intern, first-year resident that had been assigned that day, and he had scrubbed in and he had helped a little, but mainly he was observing. Now, he was fresh from a medical school up east, pretty much a hot shot, and the doc sort of figured it out and asked him a different kind of question. Didn't ask him a question about a particular kind of suture or a particular kind of antibiotic. He said, "Hey, did you notice the guy that cleaned up the room while we were doing our Q&A?" And as you might imagine, the hot shot looked at him with disdain and said, "No. Why would I?" And Ortsberg remembers saying, there it was, the teachable moment, because the whole room stopped with that, "Why would I?" The doctor very calmly said, "His name is Carlos. He's the best houseworker we got. We got a lot of them. He cleans the room faster than any of the other teams, and we're able to handle more codes, handle more surgeries." By the way, his wife's name is Maria. They live about 3 miles from here. And he went on to name the names of all 3 children, went on to name the ages of all 3 kids. And it was quite apparent that the doc had been to Carlos's house. And she never forgot it. She never forgot that simple life moment of valuing another human being who has value simply because he's a human being, let alone the effort he was bringing to cleaning the room up. Now, I wish the story went on that Carlos is now the chief of surgery at Johns Hopkins or something. He's not. He's probably retired now, but the story is still valuable. To create and show value in people is crucial. And I'll leave you with this one. The opportunity to represent God at work. Remember, we were picking up little nuggets along the way, going through Proverbs. Now's the time to drop a few on others. Imagine the most secular workplace you can think of, and maybe some of you are there. I work with a lot of guys that end up on Wall Street, and I follow up with them, and I understand what they're going through. And they're not being asked to lead a Bible study at lunch during their first week, okay? How then can they shrewdly minister in that context? Because they've been given ability and talent to know finance, to know hedge funds, to know derivatives, to know accounting. That's why they're there. But how can they represent God well at that workplace? By dropping little deposits of grace, of mercy, of compassion, of servant leadership. And the more secular, the blacker the backdrop, if you will, the more the diamond of God's grace, the diamond of God's deposits will shine. Yeah, you'll stick out a little, and you can have that proper way of letting folks know that you stand for Christ. But I promise you, when life hits, and it will, you'll get the call. You'll get the call. Be that guy, be that gal that gets to know the name of your coworkers and his or her spouse and kids and what they're interested in. Those are shrewd entrees for the gospel later to be a part of their life. Be that spiritually guided missile, if you will, in that office, that smart bomb, that asset who can come in and make a difference for the things of Christ. This concept of work helps us to appreciate and value all kinds of work, from the most simple to the most complex, by both believers and non-believers. Christians can learn not only to value and participate in the work of all people, but also to see ways to work distinctly as Christians. You know, we have an advantage, guys. We have a manual. We have the mind of God written down, and we also have an indwelling Holy Spirit that can help guide us. So pray at your work for favor, for wisdom, for skill. Work hard, contribute a profit. Ask God to allow you an unusual platform, usually through your gifts and talents, and then you'll be ready. Work distinctly as Christians. And I've been working since I was 20. I've been on my own since I was 20. That's 42 years now, almost 43. It's the best book on work I've ever read. Tim Keller's book, Every Good Endeavor, is something that if you're on this spectrum, I'm asking you to read. If anything we said today kind of intrigued you about this different way of thinking about work, this reimagined lifestyle of work, far more than what I've said is here. It's, you know, as a biblicist, a theologian, I've been a Christian 34 years. Probably 5 books in my life outside the Bible have impacted me as much as this book. So I'm not just looking for an application to end a sermon. I asked to preach this message because some of the things that God has been teaching me, even at 62 years old, I'm still learning. So be encouraged that we understand what life is like not working in a church, and we want to arm you to the best of our ability to help you understand how God would have you work. Also, their webpage, faithandwork.com, top notch, great videos, great position papers, things to cause you to think a bit. That's the idea of work from the book of Proverbs.